Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So why is Islam the fastest growing religion? Well, the reason is rather prosaic. It's mainly birth rate. There's a greater fertility amongst Muslim people than than amongst non-Muslims. So partly earlier marriage, and it's just a strong part of the culture of Muslim countries to believe that it's your duty to get married and to have children. Children are not optional. Of course, there are people who are unable to produce children for medical reasons. Now, I'm not saying that every Muslim believes this, that they're obliged to wed or that they're obliged to have children, but I would think that the generality are, where the same doesn't pertain amongst other faiths to such the same extent, or particularly not amongst those who are of no faith at all. So Muslims are usually more phylogenerative than non-Muslims. So natalism is very much part of it, whereas go forth and multiply in the Bible. Most Christians and say Jews have moved away from that. But yes, there are Christian fundamentalists and ultra-Orthodox Jews who certainly believe that it is their bounden duty to conjugate and to produce a brood, so therefore fecund Christians and Jews who are not your average ones, but who are really zealous about their faith. I mean, India versus Pakistan would be an example. India, an overwhelmingly Hindu country, well, like I say 85%, and their fertility rate is considerably lower than that of Pakistan, a country which is something like 96% Mohammedan. Or if you look at a list of countries by fertility rate, and you look at the ones with the highest fertility rate in the world, most of those are Muslim countries. Niger, Mali would be amongst these, an average of 6 children per woman. Notice we don't say how many per man on the basis a man can never be quite sure if he's sire to sprung or not. Well, not unless the child's had a DNA test. And obviously until fairly recent decades that was impossible. Anyway, so yes, there is conversion to Islam, not so huge number, but the growth of Islam is mostly through pullulation. It's not through evangelizing for the faith. Note that apostasy is forbidden under Islam, so those who apostate face the death penalty, according to Islam. Now, I know most Muslims don't believe in that and will be horrified by the very suggestion, especially in the more liberal Muslim countries such as, say, Turkey or Kazakhstan. There are Muslims who've turned away from that religion and adopted another faith. For instance, Carlos Menem, who was president of Argentina, died not long ago. He was brought up a Muslim, but I thought it was the law of Argentina required you to be a Christian. No, or maybe it was just more politically advantageous. But so he was baptized into the Church of Christ, and he became president of the Argentine Republic. Now, I'm told that conversion in jail in Western countries is quite common, particularly amongst ethnic minority citizens of the United States and various European countries, who often were brought up with no religion. Their families might have been nominally Christian some generations ago. And I think it was Theodore Dalrymple in The Spectator, this is 10 years ago more, said it was a way of getting back at Whitey. Another thing about other religions is people who are in theory Christian in Western countries, they become lapsed to the point of just dropping out from the religion altogether. And one of my pupils is actually quite an ardent Christian, but knew rather little about Christianity until quite recently. So there's a bit of secularism in the Muslim world. So I think this fertility will slow down, not everywhere, not as much. So the difference might not be as great. Now, Nigeria used to be a country that was fairly evenly balanced between Muslims and Christians, but the Muslims there tend to have rather more children than the followers of the Nazarene. There are a few animists as well. Or take Turkey, often held up as that beacon of secularism in the Muslim world, perhaps the first one to embody laicite in the whole Muslim world. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, not my favourite person for all sorts of reasons, but I've got to hand it to him, he did establish a secular state. The idea that mosque and state would be separate. You could be very religious, you could be completely non-religious, and that was completely acceptable, and the state wouldn't support or oppose any faith. And that was a quantum leap. But then we have Recep Tayyip Erdogan has ruled the country either as Prime Minister or President for 19 years now. So he's somewhat unpicked the secular settlement of Turkey. And he, certainly as recently as 2011, enjoined his followers, and they are many, to have at least 3 children to really boost the Turkish population. So that's it. And then obviously Muslim minorities in many nominally Christian countries. I mean, I know France is secular, but all right, at least 50% of people would call themselves Christians in France. But the Muslim minority is at least 10% and growing rapidly. You look at the UK, there's often talk about Muslims this and that, and are they well treated, and is there bigotry against them? And there is some prejudice against them, or are they bad? But Muslims in the UK are about 4% of the population, whereas Christians are at least 60% of the population. But the thing is, the Muslims are quite often serious about their faith, whereas the Christians usually are not. But the Muslim minority in the UK is growing fairly quickly, and the same would pertain of a number of Western countries. So anyway, that's just a little bit about why Islam is growing much more rapidly as a religion than other religions. Or you should look at even in Russia, about 15% of the country is Muslim, but again, they're growing quite quickly. Incidentally, you're not allowed to proselytize with any religion in Russia. You're not allowed to be on the street talking about your faith. You're not allowed to hand out leaflets. How on earth did religions get going? Would you have arrested Jesus Christ, Putin, for preaching? If people go to your mosque, your church, then you can speak to them about it. But they cannot know almost nothing about it unless they walk in those doors. And why would they want to if it hadn't crossed their mind, hadn't heard anything about it? Anyway, so again, for that reason, the birth rate is growing. The indigenous ethnic minorities, the Dagestanis, the Tatars, and so on, the Bashkirs, they're growing in number. All right, that's enough from me about why Muslims are rapidly growing. So the Dar al-Islam may extend. Okay, toodaloo.